Welcome to this fifth in my series of 5 top 10 videos on Wyzant, where my tutor name is Daniel B., PhD. The platform generously allows each tutor to upload a maximum of 5 short spotlight videos. I was thinking about what I could say in the span of a few minutes about thesis and dissertation projects, one of my specialties, that might be the most helpful to anyone who watches. It seemed to me that top 10 deadly mistakes, based on my decades of experience as a thesis consultant, would be a good topic. So here's a summary, after which I'll say a few words about each of these tips. Mistake number 1, ignoring the program's thesis or dissertation handbook. One of the first questions I usually ask a student who comes to me for help with such a project is whether they've obtained a copy of the thesis or dissertation handbook. The response I usually get is, "Oh, we don't have such a handbook." After I explain to them that such a manual is usually required for accreditation, they eventually discover that there is indeed such a volume, and it contains important information about requirements they need to know. Not only is there a thesis or dissertation handbook, there is typically a separate program handbook and often a style guide that students are expected to follow to supplement whatever major style guide the program follows. Failure to follow requirements set forth in any of these can be costly. Mistake number 2, devoting inadequate time and attention to topic selection. The second major problem that usually becomes evident when I work with a new thesis or dissertation client is that the student has committed to a topic that has not been sufficiently well thought out. In a best-case scenario, the weakness of the topic or the lack of fit with the student don't prevent the student from eventually receiving the degree. All too often, however, these weaknesses, for various reasons, can actually make the thesis or dissertation impossible to get approved, resulting in the student's departure from the program without the degree. If you're going to devote months or years of your life to writing a dissertation, rejection of which could result in failure to graduate from a program into which you've invested even more time, it makes sense to devote adequate time and attention to topic selection. Very often, students need help with that, help that they unfortunately can't expect to get from their advisor, which is part of the range of services I provide. Mistake number 3 is formulating an unrealistic data collection plan. In a typical scenario, a student builds a research plan around collection of survey data, thinking that this will lead to empirically proving or disproving some relevant hypothesis. The student assumes that the response rate to surveys will be much higher than turns out to be the case, yielding a sampling that is not sufficiently large to establish statistical significance. This calls the viability of the entire study into question. Students also typically underestimate the demands of their institutional review board, IRB, with regard to the human subjects protocol, as well as construction of their survey instrument. The moral of the story is that the data collection plan must be very carefully thought out. Mistake number 4, failing to adequately vet committee members. If you have a single advisor-only thesis project, your situation will of course be simpler, but you still want to give careful consideration to this important relationship. The person who appears to be the best choice doesn't always turn out to be so in the long run, and a poor selection can result in grief beyond description. A dissertation committee with 3 or more members represents a more complex scenario with multiple considerations. Whatever intelligence you can gather on any prospective member could prove to be extremely valuable. One place that students commonly fail to investigate is recently approved thesis or dissertation projects chaired by the person or persons you are considering for your committee. You will see what they are approving and will have the names of recent graduates you could contact to discuss their experiences. Mistake number 5, dropping out of touch with committee members. The longer you're out of touch with a particular committee member, the more awkward and difficult it usually feels to resume contact. For this reason, it's important that communication with your committee members be regular, if only to check in with them politely by email or inform them of your progress. Occasional use of office hours can also be a good way to keep in touch and maintain a personal connection. This naturally leads us to mistake number 6, following weak time management practices. It's important to devise a flexible master plan, one that's carefully coordinated with program or departmental deadlines. Then break the job down into small, manageable parts, after which you set a schedule and stick to it, without beating yourself up for occasional lapses. Related to number 6 is mistake number 7, overlooking common sense success strategies. Of course, it's important to pay attention to diet, exercise, and sleep. It also helps to reward yourself along the way for small accomplishments. Cumulatively, small accomplishments snowball into the kind of major progress that gets you to the finish line. But one idea that most students tend to overlook is participation in some kind of support group. If a support group doesn't exist, you can create your own, inviting people that you would most like to have in the group. One function of such a group can be to have members hold each other accountable for meeting the objectives they set for themselves. Mistake number 8 is putting off citation and documentation work. It's important that you cite and document as you go along, immediately identifying the source of anything you note down or you may end up using in your final draft. That's because a lost source can sometimes prove virtually impossible to find at a later time. So you need to decide on the system you will use, which should be coordinated with your program style guide, and then document meticulously as you go along. This includes requirements relating to quoting and paraphrasing. Claudine Gay's tenure as president of Harvard might not have been so short-lived had she followed this practice. Consider that a cautionary tale. Mistake number 9, writing before being really ready to start writing. Most people start to write before they're really ready to start writing, which is the source of so many problems and probably the main reason so much writing needs to be revised or rewritten. It's also probably the main reason for so-called writer's block. There's really no such thing as writer's block. That's usually just a reflection of lack of readiness to begin the actual writing. Instead, you might want to consider this alternative approach. Start with an outline or framework, add bullet points, shift content around appropriately, flesh points out into phrases, then create finished sentences. Don't strive for perfection until the last part of the process. Last on this list, but by no means least, is mistake number 10, neglecting to fully leverage the project effort. If you're going to invest months or possibly years of effort into a study, it would be a shame if it ultimately does not accomplish much more than fulfill a graduation requirement, which is the case for most graduate students who complete a dissertation or thesis project. With enough foresight and management, your study write-up could be converted into one or more published articles, a book or monograph, or conference papers. It also may set your career direction and determine your initial employment following graduation. Thinking of the project in those terms may help motivate you to get through it more expeditiously, ultimately creating something of higher quality. Avoiding these critical mistakes should be of immense value to you in your thesis or dissertation journey. If you're already in the process of working on the project and need help in some way, you're welcome to drop me a line. I assist with topic generation, proposal formulation, overall strategy, research, design and guidance, writing and editing, and more. Please note that as I'm not a statistician, I do not do statistical analysis or consulting. Over the decades, I've successfully assisted with projects in a wide range of areas, but if it happens that I don't feel I could help you, I'll let you know promptly, and it won't cost you anything. I've been providing these and related services for more than 30 years now, during which time I've established a solid track record, including numerous 5-star reviews on major third-party platforms such as Google and Yelp. You may wish to avail yourself of a complimentary discovery consultation, during which time I learn enough about your situation to make an assessment as to whether I may be a good fit for your needs. This, of course, would be reinforced by Wyzant's Good Fit Guarantee for an actual session, whereby your satisfaction for the first hour is guaranteed, or your money back, thereby making it completely risk-free as a proposition for you. This is Daniel B., PhD, thanking you for your attention and wishing you the very best in all of your endeavors.